Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1090 of our daily content grind. I am 1 week away from doing this for 3 years. When I started doing daily, I didn't think I would make it a month. Here we are. So that milestone looming, we do need to discuss a few things. So I want to give a lot of my thoughts on Cyberworld, our upcoming replacement for Transformers Earthspark, our brand new cartoon-centric, kids-based toy line. That said, I am going to make a minor correction here. The logo you see on screen right now, that's not the official logo. We don't know what the official logo is. I don't know where this came from, but TFW 2005 used it for their front page. I'm using it now just so we have some kind of placeholder to let you know this is what we're talking about today. Point being, Cyberworld is interesting as it is coming very hot off the heels of Earthspark, which seems to have gotten cut very, very quickly. Transformer series, cartoons especially, tend to last 3 years. Hasbro typically wants 3 seasons out of them. Earthspark is getting cut short by 1, at least from standard numbers. It looks like if season 2 was fully completed, it'll still make it to 52 episodes, which is typical length for an animated series, so it's not going to get cut short in that regard, but we did expect it to go a little bit longer, and it does feel like Hasbro pulled the plug on this very, very quickly. So Cyberworld is going to be an interesting series to watch develop because it is in a position where it feels like Hasbro is going to hard course correct into something I'm predicting into something a lot more familiar and a lot more recognizable, just easier to accept than, the out there things that Earthspark tried to get away with. That said, we're going to talk about what I want out of Cyberworld, my hopes and my dreams. But this is coming with the acknowledgement that, Earthspark failed and that we are actually acknowledging that. If you're here just to bash on Earthspark, keep your comment to yourself and just leave. We know you don't like the series. Good for you. Don't ruin our discussion. We're here to talk about the future. We're here to be optimistic and the directions I'm hoping the series goes in. The first one is, I hope it's not an overcorrection. I don't want to go back into a series that's completely safe. Cyberverse feels like a very safe series. It stars Windblade in season 1, and Bumblebee, who was back to talking the way that he did in the movie, with little voice clips. I was so happy when that died. I was so happy when Robots in Disguise killed that off, and then they brought it back, because familiarity with kids who grew up with for kids who for kids who saw the live action movies. Yay. So there's that. But also, Windblade had been pretty much in the conscious for Transformers for a while now. She's one of those characters they did push to try and get into the main spectrum of characters. Same as Bulkhead, same as Drift, but they never quite stuck, and she didn't either. By the time season 3 came about, she was like a minor character. She's a plot point more than she was a character at that point, really. So, really, Cyberverse does have a lot of familiarity to it. It's Autobots versus Decepticons. It's Megatron versus Optimus Prime. There's a Matrix involved. There's Quintessons that show up. They do new things later on. I think once the Quintesson thing happens, interesting things start happening in that series, and it starts getting really fun to watch. But beyond that, in season 2 especially, there's so much typical Transformer storytelling. And it does feel like Hasbro wanted this series to be as safe as possible. And I don't want safe as possible. I want them to do something fresh, something new, something unique. That said, maybe Earthspark tried to do things too different. It left Bumblebee in the main cast so we could get to see the main character of the franchise more often. However, the focus really is on the Maltos, the humans, and, of course, the Terrans. And now, I like the Terrans. I like their designs, I like their characters, and I do like that Transformers tried to insert brand new characters into this franchise. Something we are sorely lacking in are really good new characters that kind of change the typical dynamic from your standard bearers. So when it comes to this, maybe they did take it too far. New characters are great, and I think Cyberworld definitely needs to have some new characters around, but I feel like focusing solely on the main characters is the mistake. Ultimately, we want familiarity. Kids will want the characters they've recognized for years. Collectors will absolutely want characters they've recognized for years. When you're introducing a brand new set of characters, there's some people who are immediately going to shut it off and condemn it as crap just because it's not Optimus, Prowl, Ironhide, Jazz, etc. It's funny the way this fandom works. I hear equal parts, I want new characters and I want the old characters. Do something new. Wait, not that kind of new. That's not what I meant. We're a fickle bunch. And there are large sects of us that want very different things, and there's no way to make every single one of us happy, so hopefully they just find a nice middle ground where they're Autobots versus Decepticons, evil Megatron and all, but they're still doing something that was fresh and it feels nice. Some ways that they could do that: embrace classic characters that don't get a chance. Look at what IDW did to the likes of Swerve, Tailgate, Whirl, to a lesser extent, even like Cyclonus, Thundercracker. They did fantastic things with those characters who were barely touched on before. Some of these characters that they made into staples, were characters whose sole existence in the original cartoon was to get stepped on by Trypticon before they could ever utter a sentence in character. And IDW made those characters such a big deal, they got individual toys on their own that came out before the toys that their original G1 counterparts were molded after. The remolds got first run toys, and the original OGs had to be the retooling. That's how big those characters became. So I'm hoping whoever's writing the new series has a few favorites that they've always wanted to put in there. For animated, it's how we got Swindle, and a fantastic character animated Swindle was. And of course, for IDW, we got a plethora of characters that went in all kinds of directions that were a lot of fun. So I'm hoping that if they branch out into different, they can take a little bit from the past and pull someone out of obscurity that's relatively fresh, but still familiar for fans. Someone that we would like to see elevated, who was ignored. That said, don't just pull from G1. We've got so much content from all over, Put Override in the series from Cybertron, Put Armada Demolishor in so I can finally get some new toys of him. Put in Knockout. I have been saying it for years. If there is any character from Transformers Prime that deserves to appear in the larger fiction again, it's Knockout. Decepticons don't really have a solid medic character. There have been those over the history of the franchise, but none have the prominence, the uniqueness, or just being a cool character factor that Knockout does. And suddenly, Florida is starting to rain on my parade. If you can hear it, I apologize. Point being, you have so many fictions and so many universes to choose from, it doesn't have to strictly be Generation 1. We can branch out, we can do different things, we can go in different directions and spotlight characters that we only got one turn with. I'm excited for Transformers 1 because, in part because Arachnid's in there. A character who desperately deserves to have another go-around because of how poorly some aspects of her were handled the first time. So I'm really hoping she's got a lot more to her than she did previously. That said, if I want a veteran from the original G1 cartoon back, I'm hoping Trailbreaker. By now, if you've been watching this channel long enough, Trailbreaker's one of my boys. He's one of my characters that I'm just really attached to, and even I don't know why. I've just always liked the character, the tone, the design. I like it. And what gets me about this is that he can serve that gruff veteran character that they like incorporating into these Transformers series, that veteran who's there to teach the younglings how it is to be an Autobot that's gone through millions of years of this war, who's seen and done it all and come back to tell the story, can tell you about the Petro Rabbits. And he's the kind of character that can sub in for Ironhide, because these days you're not going to see an Ironhide in the series because it's too similar to Optimus Prime. They're not going to want to put toys of them on the shelf at the same time. You do need to have that, if you're going to have that kind of veteran security, like gruff, like powerhouse character, I think this is your go-to replacement. Yes, it's kind of invoking movie Ironhide with the black pickup truck and, kind of taking Ironhide's, general idea and concept for the roster, but that kind of works all together, doesn't it? Here's something I want to see, but I never get it properly. I want to see a return of the original 3 Seekers. We get this in little spots, right now in Earthspark, we have Starscream and Skywarp, but they gender flip Skywarp and put in Nova Storm. And I don't mind that trio. They actually worked really well in that series. And Skywarp and Nova Storm is this kind of bickering sister duo, kind of works for me. But that said, where's my boy Thundercracker? I feel like since IDW did Thundercracker so much justice in depicting him the way he was originally concepted to appear, as a Decepticon who was sympathetic toward Earth and only followed Megatron because he was afraid of him. Because of that, we have no real Thundercracker since then. The new Skybound books are kind of touching on that direction, but I would love to see it in full animation. More than that, I would love to have that Seeker dynamic of giving Starscream 2 minions that he is superior over, that he commands, because that's what feeds his ego and his lust for power, is only having 2 of them when he wants all of them, So that still puts Starscream in a position of authority, and it gives you a chance later on in seasons to kind of branch out the Seekers. And I've told you a long time ago, my idea for Seekers involves similar robots but different jet modes so you can do all of them at the same time. I would love to see that too. That said, don't make Starscream the main villain. Oh my god, this is getting to be the go-to predictable thing. RID 2015 did it for a bit. Cyberverse did it. Earthspark is currently doing it. I know these days we kind of want to view Megatron as something of a tweener, something that he could be a good guy or a bad guy, depending on your perspective and depending on how you've told the story. In Earthspark, he's kind of repentant from his actions in the war. He's siding with Optimus Prime now. IDW, he was trying to make up for his sins, even though he couldn't. That's the whole point of that story. That no matter how much good he did, he knew himself he could never be forgiven. That was the point. But it didn't mean he shouldn't try. That makes interesting Megatrons. And even in Cyberverse, we had a Megatron that eventually made a truce with the Autobots. But that's because they had a mutual enemy. If we're going to have an enemy that's not Megatron, please make it something outside. Make it the Quintessons right from the start so it's not ambiguous. Make it Tarn. Maybe at some point in this series, Megatron and Optimus do have a truce, but that goes against the Decepticon ideals Tarn is sworn to, so he goes after Megatron himself. And then you have a way of putting the DJD into fiction. You imagine a kids show version of the DJD? It'd be kind of hysterical, really. For the cast itself, I'd like to keep it tight. The benefit to Beast Wars was they generally had 5 characters on each side, and they spent time with both casts, so you got to know the characters well. When it comes to these series, a lot of times they cite, one thing with Earthspark kind of does this. We get a little bit of time with the villains, but really not enough to see them as actual characters the way we did with G1 and Beast Wars. And I'd like to see the villain cast more. But more than that, I think the show would do well to keep it to a core cast of 4 bots on each side. And then the others would rotate in as needed. So, the Decepticon side, you would always have your Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, and maybe Shockwave or whatever new Decepticon you come up with. If we want to include Shadow Striker as a main, so we can have a female on the villain side. And then a rotating 5th and 6th slot. So where, one time, here's Shockwave instead, here's Blitzwing instead. So we get time with them, but we're not overexposing anything. And we're learning that core cast of 4 Decepticons and their dynamic while we're at it, and now there's thundering over my head. Fantastic. And I would say the same thing for the Autobots. You know, in my ideal little scenario here, that gives us Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Trailbreaker, and I'd say Ratchet for the fourth, and there's your four, and then a rotating cast of everybody else. You know, here's Grimlock, here's Jetfire, here's whoever we want to use, but we give them like an episode or two at a time and then let them fall into the background again so someone else can take the place. But we focus on that core four and their dynamic and how they get along. You know, how Bumblebee kind of idolizes and looks up to Optimus Prime. How he goes to Trailbreaker for advice. How Ratchet and Trailbreaker have been bickering for centuries because, Trailbreaker keeps getting himself torn up and Ratchet's just fed up with him always ending up on the repair bay. You know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you build these dynamics and how these characters interact with each other because it's a core cast of like a smaller one, a smaller core. You get more time with them. You get to build that up. One last thing on the story points. Please touch the rest of the universe. Please touch on the rest of the universe. You know, we stick with Cybertron and Earth so much, but I would love, like after season 1 especially, use the rest of it. How long has it been since we saw Junkion? You know? The Thunder does not like Junkion. It has voiced its displeasure at Junkion. But it's true, we have not seen Junkion in the fiction for a long time, even though it's a very memorable planet for anyone who grew up with the original cartoon. And the same can be true of the planets from Cybertron, that we have not seen those. The planets from IDW. You know, we don't even see Quintessa, really. You know, we've used the name for one of the movies, but we haven't even seen the home planet of the Quintessons. They're always an invading force. So, there's so many other places we could go, you know? Like, where's Nebulon? Where's Paradron? Where are all those planets and places we visited in G1 and all these other fictions? You know, you could have so many threats, allies, and etc. coming from all these different worlds. You don't even have to have them go to those worlds. Just, know that they're there. Expand the universe. Use it. Because there's so much of it. And I should talk a little bit about the toys as well, because I do have my hopes for the toys. For starters, I understand gimmick figures are going to be a thing because, they've been doing gimmick figures primarily for the toy lines since Age of Extinction, 10 years now. And they still order them. Like toy store, stores like Walmart and Target still order them by the tons. So clearly they are, to a degree, selling, and Hasbro keeps making more of them. But man, it's time to do something new. This Drift is using the butterfly knife style transformation. We've seen that since Age of Extinction. We've seen that for a decade. I can go to my Target right now, and if the rain lets up, I'm going to go to Target after I get done with work. However, we've seen this transformation. It's available in a toy store right now for Transformers 1. It's so time to figure out new things. I would actually be a really big proponent of keeping one-step changers a very small size, but then figuring out what we can do for three-step or more involved one-step changers at larger sizes to kind of replace the Warrior class toys. Because guess what? I'm sick of the Warrior class. I'm sick of these intentionally inferior deluxes for the sake of budget. It's nice that you have an affordable figure for a kid to buy, but the result is a toy line that gets eaten by the deluxe figures that are only $5 more. And it's always so confusing when you're getting into one of these toy lines based on the current cartoon. Do I get the Warrior? Do I get the Warrior class version of Elita 1, or are they actually going to make a deluxe that I should hold out for? They did it with, they did it with Optimus Prime. They did Optimus first as a Warrior. I bought it. Now I feel like I wasted my money because they did a deluxe. More to the point, the prices are so close together, I don't see what you're gaining by having both existing at the same time. One just feels like a cheaper version than the other. And it's in with a bigger problem that a lot of the modern cartoon toy lines have had, which is, we need sizes. I want you to do away with the Warrior because you can just do larger gimmicky figures that are more interesting for little kids and, still provide a transformation. Whoa, getting loud out there. It still provides a decent enough Transformer experience. That said, we also have the option to do like one step up. See, you're not going to get them doing warrior class but larger to do bigger characters, because then you're doing like a $25 figure that's larger than a Generations $25 figure. That ain't going to fly. What you need to do is expand on the deluxes. And I'm not expecting like everyone to be the exact same size, you know? Like if we did the Cosmos from Earthspark, he'd have to be a Titan. But I wouldn't mind having the equivalent of a Voyager class that's kept to the same budgetary constraints and ideals behind the Earthspark Deluxes, you know? So at least larger characters can be large. And at least if it's one toy line across two different size classes, I know I'm far more likely to get an entire set. As I speak right now, there is no such thing as a deluxe hashtag. There's a warrior class that's out in Japan and supposedly coming out in America, but that's not the deluxes. She's getting an inferior toy to the rest of the Maltos, who have all gotten deluxes. So it's a little bit unfair, and obviously those bots are not the same size. So like it seems very weird to have them all together when Twitch is like a giant with a huge head compared to Thrash, who's supposed to be twice her height. That needs to be fixed. If Cyberworld fixes that, I won't complain about the toys. But yeah, like the toy side of it needs a complete rethink and a complete overhaul. I just want variation. That's all. And I think kids want variation too. I think what Hasbro fails to realize is the toys sell the cartoon. Because if a kid sees a cool looking set of toys on a toy aisle and goes, I want to see the cartoon that's for, they'll go look for the cartoon. Which you can't do if the toys, which doesn't happen if the toys suck. And when you're producing all these gimmicky figures that get kind of boring real quick, and like really cheap looking warrior class figures instead of just focusing on deluxes and creating one size higher, it's going to look like crap. And it's not going to sell the cartoon the way the toys should do. So there's my whole rambling. There are my wants. I basically just want a good show. That's basically all I'm really hoping for here. But if they could work in all this stuff, that would be nice too. So let me know in the comments below. It's a brand new series. They can do literally anything with it. Tell me what you want out of Cyberworld, whether it's on the series side or the toy side. Your call. And of course, as always, I will see you next time.